And now I really want to, I'm very happy to give the floor to Sara Daniel. Sara Daniel, as I mentioned, is the co-author of La Putain du Califat, and she will give us a witness of a victim in Iraq of sexual slavery. Sara, thank you very much for being with us. You have.
Thank you very much for having me. So yes, I wrote this book. It was published in 2021 about a sex slave, Iraqi sex slave, and she was slaved and she was kept in jail for 2 years. So she kept being sold and sold again, and for 2 years, and it began in Karakosh, which is the main city of the Christians, and then through Mosul, where she was held for a long time, and to Raqqa, which is in Syria. So all this moving was described in a way the geography of the Daesh, the ISIS settlement, what they call their caliphate. So how did I meet Mary, or how I heard about her is in 2016. I was December 2016. I was covering the war against Daesh, led by the Americans and the Iraqi army around Mosul, trying to liberate it. And it was one of those days where as a war reporter, you're stuck on the front line and getting bored because you cannot access to the front line. There was some heavy shelling, and the Kurds, the checkpoints, and the Kurds at the checkpoints didn't want us to approach the front line. So I was a little bit behind, and 30 kilometers away from Mosul, there's a town called Karakosh, which is the main town of the Christian community in Iraq. And for the first time in my life covering Iraq, which has been almost for 15 years, I decided to do a story on the Christian and to concentrate on them. And because during the war, it was so crowded with the subjects, and we kept writing about Sunni and Shia and the civil war, I did not focus so much on the Christians. But there I was, and just touring around this city that was just liberated, that has just been liberated, and meeting people. Very few people left. Stayed, I mean, and so they were describing their life, and you could see, it was so fresh, because you could see the signs of the ISIS fighters that just left, and they shaved their birds, so you had in the wind those huge birds flying all over the place. And then I heard about this girl. Everybody was talking about one memory, and which was the worst memory, and everybody was mentioning Mary. So they said, if there is, I think it's the worst case we've heard about, and everybody was talking about this girl. And so I met the person who is kind of a hero, who liberated her, who paid her ransom, and decided to write a story about her, because that was one of the last thing missing really from my covering of Iraq, was the woman's side, and so she was both Christian, both a woman, and what she had experienced was so tough, and I felt really compelled to write about her, and to also to describe in the daily life what ISIS behavior was, and how they committed such crimes against humanity, but this crime was particularly target towards women. So it was important to bear testimony, because also I have this sense, and that's a brief footnote, but I have this sense that now those crimes are almost forgotten, and that history has been passing very fast, addressing those horrific crimes. So I tried to meet her. Obviously, she was so shocked, having been a slave for 2 years, that she was very reluctant, and she was going through surgery and trying to put herself together. But finally, eventually, after 6 months, I was able to meet her. She agreed to meet us, Benoît, Kanabus, and I, in Jordan, while she was being relocated, and it was the Trump years, and the USR didn't want to take her, but eventually she was relocated in Australia, and that was a stop she was doing in Jordan, and that's where we met. So we began interviewing her for days and days, and her testimony was very accurate. And an amazing thing was that she was remembering exactly the names or the nicknames, because there are a lot in this area, but of the perpetrators and her masters, if you, I don't know how to qualify them, but the people who enslaved her. So she gave me a list, and it was a horrific list because it was so long, and also she provided all the details, and it was a horrid story. But she had the strength to find sometimes funny details. She was laughing. She was describing, the characters, all the particularities of her masters, and it was long, and the process was really tough, and we had to stop from time to time, but she kept saying, I want you to write all the names. And she kept talking about justice, and that she wanted to pursue justice, and that way it was so important for me to take the names and say the names, and for that at some point at the end, maybe after the book, she would be granted some justice, some recognition at least. It happened that she was captured very briefly, but with the Nobel Prize, Nadia Murad, and of course afterwards Nadia Murad had a lot of exposure because of the Nobel Prize, and she is always wondering why although the book in France had some success, sure, but it was not a bestseller. And also, what is very sad is that it was not. It was translated in several languages, but not English. So she was not able to read it till now. So she's very hopeful at some point it will get translated. And also, she's wondering why is this discrepancy between the Yazidi cases that are very much advertised and not so much her case. And she thinks it's because she is a Christian. Obviously, there were many Christian women, Yazidi women who were enslaved. So that's maybe one of the reasons. And very few people are aware that the Christians also were enslaved. But this is to say, she now she's really relying on some sort of accountability for the people who committed those crimes against her. So Mary was was captured in Karakosh, and she's one of the very few Christian who were captured. Although there may be women and men have. It's about maybe a few hundred, but she decided to stay, although a lot of people were fleeing. But what we have to understand is that in those countries ravaged by war, it's very often that you have, a call to go, that people warn you. You have to leave, rush, take all your belongings and leave. But very often it's a false alarm. So she decided this time it was not time to leave, and her sister had a new house, and they were tired, moving and moving from places to places. So they had this unfortunate call that they were not going to leave, and that's why they got captured. And one interesting thing also to note is that she was captured by neighbors at the beginning. So they knew her, we even suspect that some of the captures were people who were working for her father, who was rather a wealthy man with land, and so they might have been working on the estate of the father. And so ISIS at that point was also settling a case of envy, I guess, that those Christians were richer than them, and here it was. And what is very remarkable, I think, on her testimony is that she kept very strong, and she learned by heart the rules themselves of ISIS, because in all their cruelty, they have a book of rules concerning the slaves, and she always went to the judge, to the Kadim of ISIS, and said, they did this to me and this and such, but it's not on the book. They don't have the right to do this. So she was very accurate in reclaiming or claiming her rights. And I think that's what kept her alive during all those months and those 2 years, is that she was really insisting on those laws, and actually she wanted to leave. She wanted to see the end of it. Of course, at some point she was so distressed that she tried to commit suicide, but beside this moment of desperation, she was really trying to use the little benefits she could to keep alive. She was better treated than the Yazidi because she was Christian, and I think the Muslim integrists had more consideration for Christianity than for Yazidism, which they believe is a devil religion. But that didn't make it really easy on her, because the Yazidi women were very jealous, and so it was kind in all those those years of detention and of petty jealousy and of hard life. It was in some way she made the Yazidi were tough on her, spying on her, maybe sometimes reporting on her. So it's kind of a miracle. So this is described, and it's a very tough book. Everybody told me, but she was very adamant that we didn't skip any details, that we didn't adulterate what she experienced. So it's of course it's tough, but I think it was necessary to be told like that. And as I never heard in all my years of listening to the victims such an accuracy and such a a bluntness in this description. So I try to write it like that, and I think at some point it was necessary for all those victims of Daesh to have at least a book, some testimony somewhere that was exactly and how horrible, but it was exactly how it happened. Another very tough thing Mary experienced is when she was welcome, when she after a while was released, because the last her last owner wanted to get rid of her and also wanted to get some money from her, because he was feeling it was the end for ISIS. And that he wanted to try to buy a ticket to go back to France. So he was engaging in some negotiation and Johanna, one of the other character in the book and character very important in her life, negotiated the ransom, and she was at last released. And another horrid thing she experienced was the way she was welcomed, especially by her family, because of course she was stained. Of course, in those areas, it feels that if you've been raped and raped all over again, and well, you're not a human being, and you're not a woman. So they were very ashamed of her, and they tried to silence her, and she wanted to speak, and she really, and that's another thing that is really incredible, is that she even coming from this background and from this religion and from Middle East, she insisted in talking, and that's what I tell my feminist colleague when they speak about those, Me Too, and she is the utmost Me Too, because everybody wanted her to be silent, and even her sisters, who had been also shortly taken as hostage, but maybe 1 month, and of course the way that she was going to speak was going to expose also what they experienced and their testimony. So that was another reason that she wanted to speak. She wanted to tell everything. So I tried to be the most accurate I could and take this testimony. But yeah, and then she now is in Australia, which you can imagine how amazing and crazy it must be. It must feel for her like being in another part of the world with no friends, no, very much by herself, and now she's living, really, from what she tells me on the Skype or on the calls we have together. She's living to get justice and to see justice done, and to have some crimes also. Yes, I see a question. The title of the book is La putain du califat. I don't know if you can see it. I will. That's it's in no. Comment faire? Yeah, that's in back cover now. It's in French, as I told you, and it's not in English. So in English it would be The Horror of the Caliphate, but it's not out still. So yes, in Australia she now has some sort of problems, and she's a little bit paranoid, and she needs to be taken care of. And also COVID was not helping, because I wanted to have her calm, and a lot of people gathered money, so it was covered financially, but there is of course, having experienced such a trauma, you are very reluctant to have a vaccine and things come to your body. So that's a big problem also for her to travel and talk to the world. But we're hopeful that with the help of our friends and that we might have this book translated in English, which will be a very important step. Thank you so much. I will welcome all your questions. The only thing is that I cannot say till the end, and I'm very sorry for that.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much indeed for being the spokesperson, so to speak, of Marie. I agree with you. The Christian victims were very much put aside. And as you said, it was one Yazidi woman who did win, who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And of course, she deserved it. But anyway, possibly it should be clearer that that also many other women were victims. And also, what you are saying about her is unfortunately common in many victims, that they need months or even years to recover. And it's something we could, of course, consider. And also, what you said about rejection by her family, that's really very, very disturbing, but still, unfortunately, it happens. And I hope really that we can do something for her, and that we can make not only her story better known, but that we could bring her back to normal life. And thanks for all what you did.